The first £100,000 is the hardest money you will ever make, not because of the number. The number is actually smaller than most people think when they break it down, but because of everything you have to become to get there. The mindset shifts, the habits, the decisions, the things you have to stop doing and the things you have to start doing. The uncomfortable conversations with yourself about where your money has actually been going. I made my first £100,000. And today I'm going to tell you exactly how I did it, honestly. Not the highlight reel, not the motivational poster version, the actual truth about what it took, what I got wrong along the way, and what I would do differently if I was starting from zero today. Because here's what I know for certain. The first 100,000 is the blueprint. If you understand how to get there, everything after that is just repeating the process at a larger scale. Let's get into it. Let me be completely honest with you about where I started, because I think the sanitized version of success stories does more harm than good. I didn't come from money. I didn't have wealthy parents who gave me a head start or a safety net. I left school without going to university. My early working years were ordinary, jobs that paid enough to get by, not enough to get ahead. For a long time, I was at what I'd now call level 1, financially surviving, working hard, spending most of what I earned, and not really thinking deliberately about money at all. It just came in and went out, and I vaguely hoped things would improve over time. They didn't improve on their own. Things never improve on their own. What changed was a decision. A specific, deliberate decision that I made at a point where I was genuinely fed up with my financial situation. The decision was this: I am going to learn everything I can about how money actually works, and I am going to apply it relentlessly until my situation changes. That sounds simple, but most people never make that decision. They stay vaguely hopeful. They wait for a raise, a windfall, a lucky break. They don't sit down and say, right, I'm taking this seriously now. I'm going to figure this out. That decision, not a strategy, not a specific investment, not a lucky opportunity, was the actual beginning of my first £100,000. Everything else followed from that. Before I could build anything, I had to stop destroying what I had. And when I actually really looked at where my money was going, I was genuinely shocked. I was spending money on things I didn't value, in amounts I hadn't realized, in patterns I'd never examined, subscriptions I'd forgotten about. Food spending that was genuinely out of control, not on nice restaurants, just on lazy, unplanned, expensive per unit food decisions. Nights out driven by social habit rather than genuine enjoyment. Small purchases that individually felt harmless, but collectively were eating a massive chunk of my income every month. Here's the exercise that changed everything for me. I went through 3 months of bank statements and categorized every single transaction, not to judge myself, just to see the truth clearly. What I found was this: there was a gap between the lifestyle I was living and the lifestyle I thought I was living. I thought I was being reasonably sensible with money. The bank statements told a different story. The moment you see the truth clearly, the actual numbers, the actual patterns, you cannot unsee it. And once you can't unsee it, making changes becomes much easier because you're not fighting reality anymore. You're working with it. I cut everything that wasn't genuinely adding value to my life. Not everything fun, not everything enjoyable, just the spending that was happening on autopilot without real thought, without real benefit. And the gap I created, the difference between what I was earning and what I was now spending, became the fuel for everything that followed. If you haven't done this exercise, do it this week. 3 months of bank statements, every transaction categorized, no judgment, just clarity. It will change things. Cutting spending creates a gap, but a gap from cutting alone has limits. At some point, to get to £100,000 meaningfully fast, you need to earn more. And here's the honest truth about how I did that. I didn't get a series of lucky breaks. I didn't stumble into some magical opportunity. What I did was systematically make myself more valuable and then find ways to capture more of that value financially. Let me explain what I mean. Most people approach earning more by working harder at what they already do. More hours, more effort, same role, same skills, same market value, just more of it. that has a ceiling. And for most people, that ceiling is lower than they'd like. What actually moves income significantly is one of three things: a new skill that makes you more valuable in your existing field, a move to a field where your existing skills are worth more, or building something, a business, a side hustle, a product that generates income beyond your direct time. For me, it was a combination of the first and third. I invested heavily in developing skills that were genuinely in demand, not vaguely useful skills, specific, marketable, valuable skills that employers and clients would pay meaningfully more for. And I invested in those skills before the financial return was visible, which is the bit most people aren't willing to do. The return on skill investment is not immediate. You learn something, you get better at it, you build a track record, and then over months, sometimes years, the financial value of that skill starts to materialize. Most people give up before that materialization happens because the early phase doesn't feel rewarding enough. I didn't give up, and the compounding of skills, just like the compounding of money, eventually started to produce results that felt disproportionate to the effort I was putting in. On top of that, I started a side hustle, not immediately profitable, slow to start, requiring time and effort on evenings and weekends while I was still working full time. But it created a second income stream. And that second income stream, small at first, became a critical accelerator toward the first 100,000. Here's something most people get wrong about the first 100,000. They think it's all about earning and saving. Earn more, spend less, accumulate the 100,000 in a savings account. Done. That's not how I did it. And it's not the most effective approach. Investing started early, not with large amounts. I didn't have large amounts, but with consistent automatic contributions from the moment I had any meaningful gap between income and expenses. And here's why starting early with small amounts matters more than most people think. The first 100,000 is not just about the number. It's about building the investor identity, the habit, the emotional relationship with market movements, learning to see a portfolio dip as irrelevant noise rather than a crisis, learning to leave investments alone, learning to keep contributing when things feel uncertain. These are skills, and like all skills, they develop through practice. Starting with small amounts early gives you the practice with lower stakes, so that by the time you're investing meaningful sums, you've already developed the emotional discipline to handle it properly. I invested in index funds. Simple, low cost, diversified. I set up automatic monthly contributions and left them alone. I didn't try to time the market. I didn't chase exciting opportunities. I didn't check my portfolio every day. I just kept contributing month after month and let compounding do its work in the background while I focused on earning more and spending less in the foreground. The investing piece of my first 100,000 was not dramatic. It was boring, deliberately, intentionally boring, and boring done consistently works. I want to be honest about what I got wrong because the mistakes are as instructive as the things I did right. Mistake number one: I waited too long to start investing. I spent the first couple of years of my improvement phase focused entirely on earning more and cutting spending, which was right, but I delayed investing because I felt like I didn't have enough to make it worthwhile yet. There is no such thing as not enough to make investing worthwhile. £20 a month is worthwhile because the habit, the compound growth that starts accumulating, and the identity of being an investor, those are all worth more than whatever you think you're waiting for. I lost years of compounding by waiting until I felt ready. Don't make that mistake. Mistake number two: I took on debt I didn't need to. Early on, before I'd fully developed on my financial thinking, I financed things I could have saved for. Nothing catastrophic, but car finance, some credit card spending that I wasn't immediately paying off, and every pound of interest I paid was a pound that was working against me rather than for me. The moment I understood the true cost of debt, not just the interest rate, but the opportunity cost of that money not being invested, I cleared it aggressively and never carried high interest debt again. Mistake number three: I tried to find shortcuts. There was a period I'll be honest about this, where I was susceptible to the idea that there was a faster way, a trading strategy, a specific investment that was going to dramatically accelerate the timeline. None of it worked. The consistent, boring, fundamental approach worked. And every time I deviated from it in search of something faster, I either lost money or lost time, usually both. The lesson? The boring approach is boring because it works. And it works because most people abandon it in search of something more exciting. Stay boring, stay consistent, and let the results do the talking. Let me give you a realistic timeline, because I think unrealistic expectations are one of the biggest reasons people give up before they get there. The first 100,000 takes longer than people want it to. For most people, starting from zero, earning an average income, applying the principles properly, you're looking at 5 to 10 years. Possibly less if your income is above average or you're aggressive about the gap. Possibly more if you're starting with debt to clear. That sounds discouraging, I know. But here's what changes the psychological frame completely. The second 100,000 takes significantly less time than the first, because now you have an established gap. You have investing habits locked in. You have skills that are more valuable. And you have compound interest that is genuinely starting to accelerate. The third 100,000 takes less time than the second, and so on. The first 100,000 is hard, not just financially, but psychologically. It requires the most change in habits, in mindset, in identity. It requires you to become a different person financially than the person you were before. But once you've made those changes, once the habits are locked in and the identity is established, the process becomes self-reinforcing. You don't have to fight your instincts anymore. Your instincts have changed. That is the real prize of the first 100,000. Not just a number, the person you become on the way there. And that person with those habits, those skills, that identity can go from 100,000 to 1,000,000 in far less time than it took to get from 0 to 100,000. So let me bring this together. How did I make my first £100,000? I made a decision to take my finances seriously. I looked at the truth of where my money was going without flinching and cut everything that wasn't genuinely adding value. I invested in my own skills until I was worth more. I built a side income that created a second stream. I started investing early with small amounts and never stopped. And I avoided shortcuts. That's it. No secret, no luck, no shortcut, just a clear decision, consistent execution, and enough patience to let the compounding work. The first 100,000 is within reach for more people than think it is. Not quickly, not easily, but genuinely, realistically within reach for anyone willing to make the decision and follow through. If this video gave you something useful, something you're actually going to use, subscribe to this channel. Every single week, I put out practical, honest financial content that helps you build real wealth. Drop a comment below. Tell me where you are on the journey right now. 0? Halfway there? Already past it and working on the next milestone? I read every comment and I reply to as many as I can. Let's make it happen. I'll see you in the next one.